They never taught you the real game, because players who understand the board don't stay pawns. You think the system's rigged. Damn right it is. But here's what they're terrified you'll discover. The moment you stop asking for permission to exist on your own terms, their entire illusion crumbles. Welcome to the frequency they don't want broadcast. Let me tell you something that's going to shake the foundation of everything you were conditioned to believe. There's a reason why the most powerful truth in existence is hidden behind layers of distraction, buried under mountains of noise, camouflaged by a society that profits from your confusion. And that reason, because the second you genuinely understand this truth, not intellectually but in your bones, you become untouchable, unreachable, ungovernable. You've been living in a reality where other people's opinions became your prison bars, where their validation became your oxygen, where their approval became the metric by which you measured your worth. And somewhere along the way, you forgot the most dangerous thing a person can remember. You were born complete, not broken, not lacking, not insufficient. Complete. But they couldn't sell you anything if you knew that, could they? They couldn't control you if you realized that every system, every structure, every institution that claims authority over your life is built on one foundational lie, that you need them more than they need you. Think about it. Really think about it. From the moment you entered this world, you've been systematically programmed to doubt yourself. Kindergarten taught you to color inside the lines. Middle school taught you to sit down and shut up. High school taught you that your value could be measured by a letter grade. College taught you to accumulate debt for permission to participate. And then corporate culture taught you to trade your time, your actual life, for just enough money to survive, but not enough to escape. Every single step was designed to make you forget one critical truth. You are the source of your own power. Not your job, not your degree, not your followers, not your bank account. You. The consciousness reading these words right now, that's where the power lives. That's where it's always lived. And they've spent billions, literally billions of dollars, making sure you never look there. Because a person who understands their inherent power doesn't need to be managed, doesn't need to be controlled, doesn't need to be saved by systems that were never designed for their liberation in the first place. You want to know what the elites understand that you were never supposed to figure out. It's not some secret handshake or Illuminati conspiracy. It's this. Reality bends to whoever refuses to accept the limitations placed on them by people who accepted their own limitations. Read that again. Reality bends to whoever refuses. The game is rigged, but not in the way you think. It's not rigged against you winning. It's rigged against you realizing you can change the rules. There's a massive difference. One keeps you fighting for scraps at a table where you'll always be underfed. The other wakes you up to the fact that you can build your own damn table. And that's when everything shifts. See, most people are so busy trying to get a seat at the table that they never question why the table is shaped the way it is, why certain voices are amplified while others are silenced, why certain narratives become truth while others are labeled conspiracy, why certain people rise effortlessly while others work themselves to death and stay exactly where they started. It's because the table was built by people who benefit from you not understanding the game. And the game? The game is simple. Keep the majority distracted, divided, and dependent. Keep them arguing about surface-level issues while the real power moves happen behind closed doors. Keep them believing that the system is broken, so they'll keep trying to fix it instead of realizing the system is functioning exactly as designed. But you're here because something in you already knows this. You're here because you felt the dissonance between what you were told reality is and what you've experienced reality to be. You're here because part of you, maybe the truest part, refuses to accept the script you've been handed. And that refusal, that's your superpower. Every single person who changed the world started exactly where you are, feeling like an outsider. See, seeing through the illusion, refusing to pretend that the emperor's new clothes were anything but naked delusion. And then they made a choice. Not to wait for permission, not to ask for approval, not to seek validation from a system designed to keep them small. They chose to become ungovernable. Now, ungovernable doesn't mean reckless. It doesn't mean stupid. It doesn't mean burning bridges for the sake of rebellion. Ungovernable means you've reclaimed your internal authority. It means you've stopped outsourcing your self-worth to people who have no idea who you really are. It means you've recognized that the only person whose opinion of you matters is the person staring back at you in the mirror. And that person deserves your respect, your loyalty, your commitment. Because that person is the only one who's been there for every single moment of your life, every victory, every defeat, every transformation, every setback, every triumph. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think awakening to this truth means isolating yourself, becoming some lone wolf who trusts no one and needs nothing. That's not power. That's trauma masquerading as strength. Real power understands that you can be self-sufficient and still build community. You can be independent and still value connection. You can be ungovernable and still honor the people who've earned their place in your life. The difference is choice. You're choosing these connections from a place of abundance, not need. You're building relationships based on mutual respect, not codependency. You're creating a life that reflects your values, not performing a life that meets someone else's expectations. And that's when you become truly dangerous to the status quo. Because a person who doesn't need external validation can't be manipulated by the promise of approval. A person who doesn't fear external judgment can't be controlled by the threat of criticism. A person who trusts their internal compass can't be gaslit into doubting their reality. You become immune to the very mechanisms that keep most people trapped in cycles of seeking and striving and never arriving. You stop playing the game where the goalpost moves every time you get close. You stop chasing metrics designed to keep you perpetually insufficient. You stop believing that you're one purchase, one achievement, one milestone away from finally being enough. Because you already are enough. You always were. That was the secret they couldn't let you discover. Now I know what you're thinking. If it's that simple, why doesn't everyone do it? Because simple doesn't mean easy. Waking up from the matrix of conditioning means confronting every lie you've told yourself. Every compromise you've made, every time you betrayed your truth for acceptance, every moment you dimmed your light to make someone else comfortable. That confrontation is brutal. It's uncomfortable. It strips away the comfortable narratives and forces you to look at the raw, unfiltered truth of who you've been and who you're capable of becoming. Most people would rather stay asleep than face that. Most people would rather blame the system than take responsibility for their participation in it. But you're not most people. If you were, you wouldn't still be here. You wouldn't be willing to sit with these words and let them dismantle the comfortable lies. You wouldn't be ready to step into the version of yourself that's been waiting in the wings while you played small. And make no mistake, there is a version of you that exists beyond the fear, beyond the doubt, beyond the conditioning. A version of you that moves through the world with unshakable confidence, not because everything's perfect, but because you trust yourself to handle whatever comes. A version of you that speaks truth even when your voice shakes. A version of you that builds empires while others are still asking permission to dream. That version of you isn't some far-off fantasy. It's not locked behind years of therapy or courses or certifications. It's a choice, a decision, a commitment to stop abandoning yourself for the comfort of fitting in. And the moment you make that choice, genuinely make it, not just think about it, everything changes, not overnight, not magically, but systematically, progressively, undeniably. You start noticing patterns you were blind to before. You start seeing through manipulation that used to hook you. You start recognizing energy vampires before they drain you. You start setting boundaries that would have felt impossible 6 months ago. You start saying no without guilt and yes without resentment. You start building a life that actually reflects who you are instead of performing a life that proves you're acceptable. And here's what they don't tell you about that journey. It's lonely at first. Because you're stepping away from the herd, you're refusing to participate in the collective delusion. You're challenging belief systems that people have built their entire identities around. And that makes people uncomfortable, threatened even. Your growth becomes a mirror that reflects their stagnation. Your courage becomes a spotlight on their fear. Your authenticity becomes an indictment of their performance. And they'll try to pull you back. Not because they don't love you, not because they're bad people, but because your transformation threatens the story they've been telling themselves about why they can't change. But you can't let that stop you, because staying small to make others comfortable is the ultimate betrayal of your purpose. You didn't come here to shrink. You didn't come here to play it safe. You didn't come here to live someone else's definition of success while your soul slowly dies from neglect. You came here to be undeniable, unapologetic, unstoppable. And the crazy thing, the people who were meant to be in your life will rise with you. The right connections will strengthen. The authentic relationships will deepen. The real ones will celebrate your evolution because it gives them permission to evolve too. You don't lose people when you grow. You lose illusions of people. And that's the best thing that can happen. Because now you're building something real, something sustainable, something that can't be shaken by external validation or destroyed by external criticism. You're building internal wealth, the kind that no market crash can touch, no economy can tank, no system can steal. You're building unshakable self-trust, unwavering self-respect, uncompromising self-loyalty. And that's the ultimate power move. See, the elites don't fear your anger. They've built systems to channel anger into controlled opposition. They don't fear your intelligence. They've built institutions to credential intelligence into compliance. What they fear, what truly terrifies them, is your self-actualization. Because a self-actualized human being doesn't need their systems, doesn't buy their products to fill internal voids, doesn't consume their media to know how to think, doesn't follow their leaders to know what to value. A self-actualized human being is sovereign, and sovereignty can't be governed. That's why they invest so heavily in keeping you distracted, entertained, enraged, divided, anxious, depressed, addicted. Because all of those states keep you externally focused, keep you looking outside yourself for solutions to problems that only have internal resolutions. But you've seen through it now. You've glimpsed behind the curtain. You've tasted the truth, and you can't unknow what you know. So the question isn't whether you're going to wake up. You already are. The question is, what are you going to do with this awareness? Are you going to weaponize it for destruction? Or channel it into creation? Are you going to become bitter and cynical, or grounded and discerning? Are you going to burn down the system that failed you, or build alternatives that make it obsolete? Because here's the final piece of this puzzle. Revolution isn't fought in the streets anymore. It's fought in your daily choices. Every time you choose authenticity over performance. Every time you choose presence over distraction. Every time you choose creation over consumption, every time you choose sovereignty over compliance, those choices, compounded over time, become unstoppable momentum. They become the life you actually want instead of the life you settled for. They become the legacy you're proud of instead of the resume you're ashamed of. They become the impact you were meant to have instead of the existence you were assigned. This is your moment. Not someday. Not when conditions are perfect, not when you feel ready. Now, today, this exact second, the choice is yours. It's always been yours. They just convinced you it wasn't. But now you know better. And knowing better means you can't go back. You can only go forward into the version of yourself that's been waiting for you to remember who the hell you really are. Let me break down what happens next. Because this isn't about some vague spiritual awakening where you meditate on a mountain and hope the universe delivers. This is about concrete, tactical moves that shift your entire existence from reactive to proactive, from passenger to driver, from extra in someone else's story to author of your own epic. First, you audit everything. And I mean everything. Your relationships, your habits, your thoughts, your environments, your consumption patterns, your time investments, everything that's taking up space in your life gets examined under the harshest light you can shine on it. Because here's the truth nobody wants to hear. You've been tolerating mediocrity. You've been accepting less than you deserve because you didn't think you had permission to demand more. That ends now. Every relationship that drains more than it energizes, reassess it. Every habit that numbs you instead of elevates you, replace it. Every thought pattern that keeps you stuck in victimhood, interrupt it. Every environment that makes you smaller, leave it. Every consumption pattern that feeds your distraction, eliminate it. Every time investment that doesn't compound toward your vision, cut it. This isn't about becoming some ruthless sociopath who discards people like trash. This is about recognizing that your energy is finite and sacred, and you've been giving it away to people and things that don't honor its value. You've been spending your life force on things that don't deserve it, while the dreams that do deserve it sit starving in the corner. And here's what's wild. The moment you start making these shifts, the universe starts rearranging itself around your new frequency. Opportunities you couldn't see before suddenly become visible. People who match your new energy start appearing. Resources you needed somehow become available. It's not magic, it's physics. You changed your vibration, so you're attracting different frequencies. But let's get real about what this looks like in practice. Because I'm not here to sell you fairy tales about manifesting Lamborghinis by thinking positive thoughts. I'm here to tell you that reclaiming your power is messy. It's confrontational. It requires you to have conversations you've been avoiding. It requires you to set boundaries that will make people angry. It requires you to disappoint people who've gotten comfortable with your compliance. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with being called selfish by people who were perfectly fine with you sacrificing yourself for their comfort. You have to be okay with being called difficult by people who benefited from you being easy. You have to be okay with being called changed by people who need you to stay the same, so they don't have to confront their own stagnation. Because the alternative is spending the rest of your life performing a version of yourself that makes others comfortable while your authentic self suffocates. And that's not living, that's slowly dying while your heart's still beating. So you make the choice. The hard choice, the scary choice, the choice that feels like jumping off a cliff with no guarantee of a soft landing. You choose yourself, not in some narcissistic way where you become an asshole who doesn't care about anyone else, but in the foundational way where you recognize that you can't pour from an empty cup and your cup has been empty for so damn long you forgot what it feels like to be full. You start filling it back up, one boundary at a time. One authentic choice at a time, one moment of radical self-honesty at a time. And it's uncomfortable as hell because you're reversing years, maybe decades of conditioning. You're going against every message you've internalized about being nice, being agreeable, being accommodating, being selfless to the point of self-erasure. But discomfort is the price of evolution. Every single version of yourself that you've ever become required you to destroy the version you were outgrowing. The caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly by being comfortable. It literally dissolves into primordial soup inside the cocoon before it can reconstruct itself with wings. You're in the soup right now. Everything feels unstable. Everything feels like it's falling apart. Good. That means the transformation is working. That means you're right on schedule. That means you're exactly where you need to be. And here's what they don't tell you about this phase. It gets worse before it gets better. The people who want you to stay small will escalate their tactics. They'll guilt you. They'll manipulate you. They'll try to make you feel like you're the problem, like you're being unreasonable, like you're abandoning them, like you're changing for the worse. Don't believe them. You're not changing for the worse. You're changing for the real. You're shedding the performance. You're releasing the mask. You're stepping into authenticity. And authenticity is terrifying to people who've built their entire sense of safety around predictability and control. But you don't need their approval anymore. That's the whole point. You've reclaimed your internal authority. You've remembered that the only person who needs to be okay with your choices is you. And as long as you can look at yourself in the mirror and respect the person looking back, nothing else matters. Now let's talk about what happens when you consistently make choices from this place of reclaimed power. Because this is where life gets interesting. This is where you start seeing results that would have seemed impossible from your old paradigm. Your health improves because you're no longer carrying the stress of living a lie. Your relationships deepen because you're showing up as your authentic self, which attracts authentic connections. Your creativity explodes because you're no longer filtering everything through the lens of what's acceptable. Your income increases because you're no longer undervaluing your contributions out of fear of being too much. Everything starts clicking into place because you're finally aligned. Not perfectly aligned, that's not a real thing, but directionally aligned, fundamentally aligned, aligned in the ways that actually matter. And from this place of alignment, you start building, not reacting, not surviving, building, creating, constructing, deliberately designing a life that reflects your values instead of inheriting a life that reflects someone else's fears. You start asking better questions. Not what should I do, but what do I want to create? Not what will people think, but what will I respect myself for? Not, is this safe, but is this aligned? Not what's the guaranteed path, but what's the path worth walking even if it doesn't work out? And those questions lead to different answers, different choices, different outcomes, different destinations. You stop playing small ball and start swinging for the fences. You stop hedging your bets and start going all in on yourself. You stop waiting for permission and start granting yourself authority. You stop seeking validation and start generating your own approval. And that's when you become unstoppable. Not because you never fail, not because you never struggle, but because failure, doubt, and struggle no longer define you. They're just weather patterns that pass through your experience without fundamentally altering your trajectory. You develop this unshakable core, this internal stability that external chaos can't penetrate, this deep knowing that regardless of what happens out there, you've got you in here. And that's enough. That's always been enough. This is the frequency the elites don't want you to access. Because a person operating from this frequency doesn't need saving, doesn't need managing, doesn't need their products, their systems, their narratives, their permissions, their validations. A person operating from this frequency is free, genuinely free. Not freedom from consequences, that's not real either, but freedom from conditioning, freedom from manipulation. Freedom from the invisible chains that keep most people trapped in lives they don't actually want. And that freedom is contagious. Your liberation gives others permission to liberate themselves. Your courage inspires others to find their own. Your authenticity creates space for others to be authentic. You become a walking example of what's possible when someone stops asking permission and starts claiming their birthright. That's your legacy. Not the money you make, not the titles you earn, not the possessions you accumulate. Your legacy is the frequency you embody, the permission you grant, the possibility you represent, the proof you provide that another way exists. And that legacy starts now with this choice, this moment, this decision to stop playing the game by their rules and start creating your own. The question is, are you ready? Are you ready to be uncomfortable? Are you ready to be misunderstood? Are you ready to be alone before you find your tribe? Are you ready to build something real instead of performing something acceptable? Because if you're genuinely ready, then everything changes. The Matrix doesn't have power over you anymore. You're not jacked in. You're not feeding the system. You're not playing their game. You're free. And freedom, once tasted, can never be forgotten. The Matrix doesn't break when you fight it. It breaks when you stop feeding it. So tell me, what's the one lie you're done believing? Drop it in the comments. Let's watch their illusion collapse together.